If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what?
Smart.
Pay her a couple $1,000,000, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role.
It has proven to be Disney's worst investment ever in the history of Disney investments. I mean, they've gone through various scandals with this girl.
Just listen to what she says. She just and angry.
Welcome back. 2 full weeks have rolled by since Disney's glitter-drenched live-action remake of Snow White swept into cinemas, and the aftershocks are rattling every branch of the Magic Kingdom. What should have been an easy layup, a glossy respin on the very fairy tale that launched the Disney empire, has instead snowballed into a corporate headache, a fan culture civil war, and a textbook lesson in how nostalgia can bite back when it feels betrayed. Box office analysts had forecast a triumphant debut that would cruise through spring on the strength of family matinees and brand loyalty. But the numbers told a different story. A respectable 40+ million domestic opening followed by a vertiginous plunge, with ticket sales eroding week after week until the grosses sat well below the level needed to recoup an eye-watering production and marketing bill rumored to top the $300 million mark. Those figures alone would have raised eyebrows, yet the sequel drama unfolding inside Disneyland's gates has poured gasoline on the fire. Guests who arrived at Rope Drop last Monday, expecting to relive the enchanted cottage scenes of Snow White's scary adventures, renovated just a few years ago and rechristened Snow White's Enchanted Wish, found the ride sealed behind plywood barriers, its hand-painted murals masked by tan scrim, and its whimsical cue music abruptly silenced. There were no cast member farewell buttons, no commemorative merch drops, not even a cheery blog post countdown announcing a refresh. Just hastily printed under-revision placards fluttering in the breeze. For lifelong fans, the timing felt suspiciously like an apology without words, a tacit admission that something about the new movie had gone sideways enough to force a rethink of Disney's oldest dark ride princess. Inside Fantasyland, the absence is visceral. This was the attraction that used to have kids peeking through their fingers as the witch cackled over her bubbling cauldron. That unmistakable aroma of musty lumber and decades-old stage fog clung to the carved beams overhead. The dwarf's jovial hi-ho once spilled out of the mine scene and drifted over the rest of the land like a comfort blanket. To see the cottage windows now boarded over is to feel a plug yanked from the park's emotional mains. Parents who grew up on that exact ride found themselves kneeling beside confused youngsters, trying to explain why something Grandma loved since the 70s is suddenly off-limits without warning. Cast members could only smile politely and repeat the talking point that magical enhancements are in progress. But Whisper Networks quickly suggested those boards went up less for pixie dust touch-ups and more to shield the brand from a backlash that was spiraling out of control online. And spiral it did. The fuse had been laid well before opening weekend, during a press tour where 23-year-old star Rachel Zegler spoke candidly, some say bluntly, about why she believed the original 1937 princess was too passive and why modern audiences deserved a heroine who writes her own destiny rather than waiting for a royal rescue. Sound bites like that resonate with Gen Z viewers who crave autonomy and representation. Yet to armchair film historians and silver screen purists, the comments sounded like sacrilege. Posts clipped from her interviews raced across X, layered over vintage stills of Walt's hand-drawn Snow White, with captions like, "She walks so you could run." The debate metastasized into a hashtag trench war. Number sign "Let Snow White speak" versus number sign "Hands off our dwarfs." Each camp firing memes and reaction videos faster than a dwarven pickaxe swing. Things came to a head when a screen-captured Instagram story, allegedly shared by the teenage son of a Disney executive, accused Zegler of hijacking the crown and painting the studio into a corner with her outspoken takes. The story vanished within hours, but not before entertainment bloggers immortalized it in sidebars and listicles. Suddenly the narrative calcified. Here was an actress whose individual comments were being blamed, rightly or wrongly, for chilling the commercial reception of an iconic property. Context got flattened in the rush for clicks. Causes and effects blurred like watercolor in the rain. Yet perception is king, and the notion that Zegler had disrespected the source material lodged firmly in the public consciousness. Then came the dwarfs, or rather, the not dwarfs. Leaked set photos splashed across fan accounts showed 7 larger-than-life mocap performers dressed in luminescent suits, standing in for what insiders called magical guardians inspired by global folklore. Gone were Doc's spectacles, Bashful's shy grin, Dopey's oversized tunic. In their place stood sleek, amorphous figures, rendered in shimmering blues and violets, towering at full human height. For some moviegoers, this was bold world-building. For others, it was an act of erasure. When the final film projected these Guardians onto IMAX screens, entire rows fell into uncomfortable laughter. Smartphone flashes captured audience reactions, and TikTok stitched them into a damning montage that clocked millions of views before the credits had finished rolling. Behind the curtains, Disney's finance department was already tallying costs that dwarfed, no pun intended, initial projections. Mid-2024 reshoots, ordered to sand down the sharpest lines from Zegler's monologues and to wedge in a handful of legacy moments for uneasy fans, added somewhere around $60 million, according to insiders who spoke on background. Factor in late VFX tweaks to give the Guardians more storybook warmth, plus a global marketing blitz anchored by pop star tie-in singles, and the final spend soared past numbers that normally belong to galaxy-spanning superhero crossovers. Break-even would require a worldwide haul north of $600 million. The current trajectory hints at a theatrical finish barely halfway there. Streaming might soften the blow, but Wall Street has noticed. Disney stock dipped 2% the Monday after opening weekend tallies were released. Meanwhile, the merchandise ecosystem that normally props up a new Disney princess began to wobble. Inside the park, Snow White plush sales slid nearly 40% compared with the launch of last year's Little Mermaid remake. One retail lead, under condition of anonymity, confided that kids kept pointing to the movie posters and then to the dolls on the shelf, asking why one Snow White wore a bright crimson cape while the other dazzled in iridescent honeycomb armor. Parents shrugged, puzzled by a design language that seemed to drift from traditional fairy tale into some far-flung fantasy realm. Unsold inventory quietly migrated to clearance bins, while Encanto toys and classic Mickey plushies filled the prime wall space. Outside the shuttered ride, the park's cobblestone path has become a de facto speaker's corner. Each morning at rope drop, a loose coalition of annual pass holders forms a semicircle, hoisting hand-lettered placards that read, "Restore the classics, dwarfs or bust," and the cheeky "Mirror, mirror, where'd our ride go?" They break into the dwarfs' work song every half hour, their voices echoing beneath the pastel turrets of King Arthur Carousel. A stone's throw away, a rainbow-sprinkled clutch of teenage superfans cosplaying as the new Guardians counters with chants of Snow White 2.0 and Let Her Lead. Some days the group swap pinback buttons in good humor. Other days the atmosphere crackles and security teams gently remind everyone that costume prop weapons must remain sheathed. So far, cooler heads prevail, but the optics are impossible to miss. Disney's most iconic princess has split her kingdom down the middle. Up in Burbank, crisis communications strategists huddle over sentiment dashboards. One leaked deck outlined a three-phase plan. Phase 1, reiterate respect for Walt's legacy. Phase 2, double down on empowering language for modern viewers. Phase 3, reframe the Guardians as descendants of European and Latin American mythologies, not replacements for beloved characters. The same deck floated two ride refresh scenarios. The so-called hybrid retcon would keep the classic dwarf animatronics, complete with glittering gem mine, but sprinkle in holographic cameos of the Guardians during key moments, effectively declaring both versions canon in different chapters of the story. The more radical nuclear overhaul would gut the entire show building and install a different intellectual property altogether. Most rumors point to either Frozen Ever After West or Mirabelle's Casita Adventure, calculated to pull in proven fan bases and distance Fantasyland from combustible debate. Financially, the stakes could hardly be higher. If Disney Plus engagement surges once the film transitions to streaming, executives may trumpet that as proof audiences ultimately embrace the new vision, spin the ride closure as routine plussing, and charge ahead with the next live-action revival. If, however, viewership mirrors the lukewarm box office and consumer product sales keep dipping, the board may grow cold on high-risk remakes and divert budgets back to original animated adventures where brand dilution is minimal. Theme park Imagineers who pride themselves on immersive storytelling may be ordered to future-proof attractions so that they connect loosely to IP without being hamstrung by any single remake's reception. All of that hinges on what guests decide with their wallets and their watch lists over the next 6 months. For Rachel Zegler, the calculus is equally fraught. Breakout success on streaming could reposition her as the voice of a new Disney era, brave enough to challenge tired tropes and weather the storm. A continued slump could freeze her brand in amber as the performer whose frank opinions collided with fandom's protective nostalgia. Hollywood veterans note that studios have long memories. Casting meetings often weigh not just talent, but the social media footprint and volatility each star brings. Zegler's singing voice and screen presence remain undeniable, yet the narrative swirling around her may take another hit role, a runaway hit album, or simply the passage of time to quiet. Peel back the corporate stakes, though, and we arrive at the heart-level question animating all this turbulence. Can a tale like Snow White, which, let's remember, was itself a reinterpretation of a much older Brothers Grimm fable, be continually reinvented without unraveling the emotional strands that first bound audiences to it? For nearly 90 years, the story's charm has rested on clear lines between innocence and envy, love and deception, woodland wonder and royal splendor. Tweak those lines and some viewers feel liberated, finally seeing themselves reflected in a narrative once bound by 1930s social mores. Others feel as though a stained glass window has been scrubbed over with neon paint. Both responses are intensely personal, which is why neither camp is eager to yield. That tension now pulses through every plywood panel nailed across the Fantasyland cottage. Every hammer strike at midnight echoes like a cliffhanger. What will emerge when those boards come down? Will the dwarfs tip their caps as always? Will the guardians shimmer in the rafters? Or will an entirely new heroine beckon guests into a different story, leaving Snow White's chapter to rest in a museum of Walt-era wonders? One thing is certain, Disney cannot simply wish upon a star and make this uproar vanish. The studio that practically invented modern brand management now confronts a case study in how quickly goodwill can erode when fan expectation, creative ambition, and corporate marketing pull in different directions. The cottage in Fantasyland is a physical reminder that icons aren't just intellectual property, they're emotional heirlooms. Mess with them hurriedly, and the reaction is swift. But Disney also knows that stories which never evolve risk sliding into irrelevance. The challenge lies in finding that elusive balance where legacy glows brighter, because new light is shining through it, not because the pain has been swapped for something unrecognizable. So the hammers keep pounding behind those walls. Wall Street keeps tallying grosses, and fans keep refreshing their feeds for the next leak or executive statement. And we'll be right here on Celeb Limelight, chronicling every twist, the updated streaming numbers, the latest concept art leaks, the first preview photos when construction walls finally peel back, and the verdict from the crowd when Fantasyland's gates swing wide once more. Will cheers drown out the skeptics, or will the whispers of disappointed fans linger longer than any new fireworks spectacular? Whatever happens, the tale of Snow White's 2025 makeover has already written itself into the annals of pop culture cautionary legends, reminding us that sometimes the fairest story of all isn't about poisoned apples or magic mirrors, but about the fragile contract between memory and reinvention. Keep your notifications on high, hold those balloons tight, and stay tuned.